Hello and welcome to Women Engage. We are so pleased that you could join us on our program today. Today we have a really interesting topic. Our topic for discussion today is, how long should I wait? Now, I need to give you a bit of a story to give you a background to this topic. I was organizing a family ministries program in my local church, and one of our young women came and spoke to me. She'd finished school, she was working, professional woman, her late 20s, and she said, "Jocelyn, it's good that you're doing all of these programs for families, but what about people like me?" And she says, it's such a challenge. She said, I'm not in a relationship right now. I want to date guys in the church, and the guys in the church, either they don't want to date you, or if they want to date you, they want to have sex. If you don't want to have sex, they don't want to know you. You're discouraged from going outside of the church. And she said, how long do I have to wait? And it was such a challenge for me, because I had never put myself in her place or in the place of the young women in our church going through that kind of a situation. And it made me stop and think, how long should I wait? And so we're going to be discussing that today, because there might be someone out there who's facing exactly the same type of challenge. But before we go any further, I want to introduce our panelists today. And I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. We have some regular members to our panel, but we understand that some of our viewers might be watching us for the first time. So I'll ask you to tell us your name and then answer the question, have you ever had to wait? That is, waiting for God to bring a man into your life so that you can have a stable relationship. Have you ever been in that situation? And by stable relationship, I'm talking about a relationship that leads to marriage. So I'll begin. My name is Jocelyn Isabidie, and I have never had to wait.
My name is Debbie Maloba. I have never had that opportunity to wait. I finished my studies, and a few months after, somebody presented himself to me. So that was like an opportunity and then a blessing from God. So I praise the Lord.
My name is Rose Misati from Kenya. I've never had to wait. My struggle has always been that there are all these people who want to marry me, and they want to marry me now, and I'm not ready. So how do I keep them off until when I'm ready? So in that way, then, I've never had the opportunity to wait before.
My name is Isabel Kemunto. I think I've waited for about 2 times. When I finished school, I had to wait and finish my schooling before I could get married. And having married for 27 years, when our firstborn was 26 years, my husband walked out to another marriage. At that time, it was devastating, but I've had to wait, and patiently, I'm waiting for God to bring him back.
All right, so for Isabel, she's had at least that experience of waiting. For me, like my sisters here, I didn't really have that experience where I felt like I'm waiting for a man to come into my life. I didn't have that experience. And when this young woman at my church approached me with that, I really thought about it for a long time. She really challenged me, because I realized that often when you're not going through a situation, you don't put yourself in other people's place. And I realized that, because when I finished school, I was dating my husband. At the time I was at university, and when we finished university, a year later we were married. I never had that experience where I am waiting for a man or something. So, and in my mind, I see these young people in church running these family events, and it had never occurred to me to put myself in their place and to think, what is it like to be in a situation where you are waiting, you're seeking, you're praying, and no one seems to be coming. And it challenged me and it humbled me. But this is a reality, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, sometimes those of us who have not had the opportunity to wait might not be very sensitive. Like for a long time, I just didn't know that you can be ready for a relationship and the person, especially, let me say, the man, is not presenting himself. I always thought that every young girl had so many, and those who were not married, at least at what I thought was the right time, I thought it because they didn't want. That was my thinking. Until when I asked a friend who was around 30 years, and she was a professional, and I asked her, you mean you don't want to get married? And she was very upset. And she talked to me very candidly. And that's when I actually understood that there are those who are seeking, they are ready, they are praying, but the opportunity has not come. And in a way, that made me sensitive to their needs. And you know, it also becomes tricky because society expects the lady to wait and for the man to approach.
Yes.
So in that way, then you find even if she's seeing somebody she may be interested in, all she can do is to pray and to wait.
Yes.
So that makes it a little challenging.
And to add on that, you know, there could be incidents whereby maybe a lady has been disappointed. And at that time when she got disappointed, her age was suggesting she's already established. And so from there now, it becomes a challenge. She's even going through some kind of trauma in herself, and nobody understands. And the people out there, they are looking at her, what is happening? Because a lady can't go and start saying, I need a man. It is not the African culture.
And if you do, people look at you very badly. Yes, you're so desperate. Even those who would have been interested, all of a sudden now, they get scared and they back away.
So it is possible there are those ladies who are going through that kind of pain, but nobody understands.
Even some will tell you, what did I do wrong so that I find myself in this condition, especially those who are connected to cultures, because she will tell you now I'm in my 40s. Is there any hope that I will get somebody who will take care of me or with whom I will live and get children? So it is challenging. What will you give as answer when a lady asks you that question?
I feel there is a place for praying and for waiting and hoping. My personal opinion is also that a lady can strategically place herself in an environment where she's likely to be spotted. I keep giving this example and saying if somebody has been serving in a church for a while and they know, people know them, I think it's also good to even go visiting in other churches. It's good to frequent places where she can interact. Social functions, library is one example where she can get somebody. And I also believe that there is room for introduction. A mutual friend can introduce people to one another. Yes.
So some practical things that can be done.
Yes, yes. And even support groups helps. There are support groups for single people. I know some churches run support groups for widows and widowers and singles. So they go for retreats. In that way, then even as they're praying and hoping, they also meet and they get to know one another. Because, you know, you can't drive a parked car. You can't swim when you're not in the pool. So you need to get moving and get going, and you will meet people along the way. And also not to be so focused on the waiting. You know, sometimes we can be so consumed by our desire to be spotted until we become paralyzed. We can't do much. So it's good to get busy. Get busy doing something. Serving in the church, you know, in the community. Work, go back to school. Along the way, then you can get somebody.
And I think it is also important that, because if a lady realizes that probably she was abandoned, she needs to heal first. Because if she rushes, she might end up in the wrong hands. So she needs to heal first. She needs to come to herself. And then once she's herself, then she now needs to talk. You know, before you speak, nobody knows what is happening.
Someone has to have the confidence to say, I'm single and I'm searching. Yes.
Or I'm available.
I'm available.
I listened to one black American lady. She came to Kenya and she said something very bold on national television. She said, I'm over 40 and I want to ask anybody out there, if you have your father, your grandfather, your uncle, your brother, your friend, we can discuss. We can discuss. She said, when you get to a certain age, many things don't matter. We can have a discussion. And it was within a Christian context.
Yes. Yeah. But now, let me maybe take us back before we continue even to go forward. What you've just said, Rose, has, you know, made me think again about some of the challenges that come from the period of waiting. Because, and sometimes also I think waiting is relative, because there are some people who, even when they're at university, they feel like, oh my goodness, I'm waiting, you know, and yet some of us, it's like, no, I'm not waiting. I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm busy with my school. That can come later. But sometimes when people are in that process of waiting, and what is waiting to one person may not be to another, but in that process, sometimes it leads to certain challenges. Like, you know, I've had one of my friends say to me, you know, Justin, I just want any man, you know, as long as he's wearing trousers, I'm there. And in my mind, I was thinking, why is she just so desperate? Because I put myself in, she was not in a stable relationship, but she had had many boyfriends, unlike me. She had had many, many boyfriends. So I thought, you know, she'll have others that will come. Right now, she's not in a relationship, but maybe because now I'm getting married and she's not yet there, she's now all of a sudden desperate that any man will do. And I think that's one of the challenges that come. I think that's one of the challenges that comes is that, you know, you almost get rid of all of your standards and expectations. And of course, there are unrealistic expectations and unrealistic standards. But I think, you know, as a woman, as a Christian, there have to be some basic values and standards. But when someone gets desperate and it's like any man will do, I think that's one of the challenges that I've seen.
And that really is a fundamental problem. What I would like to say is that a woman is of value, with or without a man. You don't need a man to validate your worth. That's very important. So sometimes you find some ladies are struggling with inadequacies. And so they think when they get a man, they will cover their nakedness, quote unquote. So I think that is where it begins. Secondly, you've raised a very important point of when you're in school, are you waiting? I feel priorities. We need to have our priorities right. For me, I was very clear that I needed to finish university, build a house for my mother, and support her, stabilize her, before I can think of getting married. So things were happening so fast, and I'm meeting these men in university, and they feel we want to get married to you after you finish university, you'll be ready. But I said, no, I will not be ready. I need to work for 3, 4, 5 years. I didn't work for those 3, 4, 5 years, but I worked for that 1 year. So in that way, I was actually feeling rushed. And yet, there are my age mates who got married even after Form 4, and in university, they were still saying they are waiting. When in my mind, I knew that I am not waiting. Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to emphasize on the fact that you need to plan. Everything needs to be planned. I think you touched this one. When you plan, that is where now you will be able to have a feedback and see what is being accomplished and what is not. If what you have planned, you have not yet reached it, you ask yourself, why? And you change. You change your strategies. You have examples in the Bible where women, they were in a hurry, and what they decided didn't help them. So in every step, you be patient and trust in God. He will lead you. He will guide you.
And I think one of the challenges that probably we need to educate especially the young girls, they have set standards, the type of person they want. So if that person does not come on their way, it's like, no, I've not got the right person.
You know, that's a good point, because that's almost like the counter opposite point of what I said before. So how do you find the balance? Because what Isabel is talking about is these unrealistic standards, you know, of this perfect man who doesn't sweat, doesn't do anything. Yes, everything. Yes, he's already attained professional, whatever level of professional competence you feel is necessary. He has a house, he has a car, he has, you know, these unrealistic expectations. And so there's, on that one hand, some people whose expectations are just unrealistic and too high. So anyone that comes your way that doesn't meet that standard, you don't even see them, you know, because you're waiting for this perfect person. And then on the other hand, there's the other extreme of any man will do. So how do we, maybe before we move on to anything else, how do we strike a balance between those two extremes? Because I think both of those are extremes.
They are extremes. I think number one is to appreciate that no one is perfect. You're not perfect yourself. If you were perfect, you're not perfect yourself. And so there's no way you can get a perfect person. You wouldn't even cope with them because you're imperfect. Yeah. So number two is to acknowledge that you also are a work in progress. Just like them, they're also a work in progress. And to focus on building yourself. Making yourself, if now we are talking women, making yourself a woman who will complement a man. Because many times we look for that perfect person, and if they are not, we want to panel beat them. But I think if you focus on yourself, building yourself, you will attract also somebody who is focusing on building themselves. Yeah. And perhaps on a practical aspect for me, what worked, I had my top three. My top three non-negotiables, which I said, one, it has to be a Christian, who, of course, so that means he doesn't drink or smoke. Somebody, in my mind, I thought, who doesn't have a potential to batter me. So I said I will not stand abuse or infidelity in my mind at that time. So I said, anybody who, if we are dating, then I see that he's again running after somebody else, no. If they are violent, you know, they don't treat me well, they shout at me, no. If they are not a Christian, no. At least at that point, I said I will do my best within that, but I know things change and people change. So if you can have just the top three non-negotiables, 2 or 3, I think so. But generally, no one is perfect.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And I also had my list. And the surprising thing is my list started in my teens. I was not dating. I was not intending to date. But from when I was 14, I fell in love with Jesus. And I used to tell him everything. We used to talk about everything. He was my best friend. And I would talk to him about my future husband and what kind of a person he should be. And so I had the same, you know, through this conversation I had with my friend Jesus, I came up with my non-negotiables, that these are the ones that are non-negotiables. But I remember hearing even the advice from my mother, who told me that, you know, when it comes to relationships, women, you need to be grounded. She said, I'm not going to be one of those mothers that tells you, don't bring a man here who doesn't drive, who doesn't have this. She says, even if the boy is walking, you will build together. You will buy the car together. Don't look for wealth when you're looking for a man. She told me, look for a person who can create wealth. Look for someone who is not lazy, who is, you know, who is hardworking, who has potential. But don't look for someone who is already there. Because what contribution are you then going to make? And she used to say, you'll come in, everything is set. So what are you bringing to this?
Like a piece of furniture.
Yes, you're just, yes, just to decorate. To add to already his many, yes. And so I appreciated that my mother used to give me that, you know, advice that really used to ground me. But I think it is important, like Rose has said, to have these non-negotiables, and they should be based on values and things that are really important, rather than, of course, I had some things that I liked, like I love men with deep voices, and my husband has a deep voice. But those are not things that, you know, were non-negotiables, you know, tall, dark, handsome, we think. So I think it's important to have some standards, but then at the same time, they should be godly, based on your Christian values, rather than you know, these expectations that sometimes some of our young people have very unrealistic expectations. And sometimes it's we as older sisters, as parents, who, you know, put those things in them. You know, if a mother says to you, don't bring home a guy here who doesn't drive, you know, then are you really going to see that there's value in looking at a man's potential rather than what he has in his pocket?
Yeah, yeah. And you see, I like the point you brought about your friend who, when you are preparing for your wedding, she appeared very desperate. I think marriage is not a competition, or dating or not dating. Everybody walks their own path. So sometimes the young people get pressurized because they feel everybody around me is getting married, everybody's getting children, and I'm still single. But everybody walks their own path.
And also, I like the fact that you need to know that God has his time. And God is the one who helps us. Just to pray to God, to be committed. I have an experience. For me, I prayed. I said, God, now time has come for me to get married. Yes, I had my list, this non-negotiable list. But the most important is to listen to God's voice. And God will do it. He will fulfill it. He will never deceive you. He will never deceive you. When you trust in him, he brings the men, not only the men you need, but the ones he knows that you will build together. Yes.
And just to add on that, actually Debbie has said something very important. We need to realize we are in the hands of God. And he has good plans for us. I just mentioned that my husband walked out. Because when we started dating, I was asking God to give me that one who comes from him. And so when he came to my life, and we loved each other, and we went 27 years without any problem. So when he walked out, I told God, bring him back. And something happened yesterday, which I want to testify to.
Hey.
So the previous day, my daughter told me, Daddy is admitted. So that evening, my daughter came and said, Daddy has said, you go and see him. So I went to the hospital to see him. He was excited to see me. Well, he shed tears. You could see, but I was able to calm him down. And we talked. And then somebody came and is introducing me. This is my wife. And he escorted me up to the lift. So what am I saying? He's coming back. He has already come back.
How long have you been separated from your husband?
Since 2009.
2009.
That is about 9 years. So I'm just thinking, you provoked my thinking. I'm so happy for you, and you truly look happy and expectant. I'm just wondering, obviously when somebody walks out on us and we feel to the best of our knowledge we didn't do anything to wrong them, as a human being you feel bitter, you feel angry. How did you deal with that? Because you don't seem like you're feeling angry.
Well, I actually loved my family. And when it happened, at some point I was confused. If I did not hold on to God, I think I could not be okay. But I held on God. I said, God, do not leave me. And I want to testify, God hid me here. There is no day I reached where I said, why did it happen? God has kept walking with me all through for the last 9 years, because this is the 10th year now. I was a teacher for that time. I was even a teacher before we got married. So I decided I do not want to continue with the teaching. I want to be in the ministry of God. So I can only listen to one voice from God. Because sometimes when you are in the secular world, there are many people will come with different ideas. Others will tell you, get somebody else. Somebody will tell you, go to court. You will get a lot of advices. So I decided I'll go to the feet of Jesus. And I want to listen to God to tell me what to do. And I want to testify day after day. He has been telling me what to do. At some point he told me, don't worry, I'm bringing them back. And I've been waiting, and he has brought them back.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So, wow, a very fresh testimony. Yes. That's powerful. Ladies, we have so much we can still talk about this topic. We haven't even begun to touch the topic, but unfortunately we've run out of time. So we're going to have to end here. But as we close, I would like for you to think of one thing that you can tell our listener out there, maybe one of our young women or even older women that is waiting. What word of advice can you give them to strengthen them as we close? Isabel, we'll start with you.
There are 3 qualities that will qualify us to heaven: the faith of Jesus Christ, the commandment, and the patience. So I think we could be going through some tests of being proven to be patient. And the young girl, they need to be patient. God's timing is the best. God will bring the right person at the right time. Yeah.
I would also like to encourage, if there's any girl out there who is waiting, find an accountability partner. Find somebody you can be very open with, you can share with, they can pray with you, and if possible, they can even introduce you to meet somebody. So don't walk alone. Find preferably an older woman who you can confide in, who can encourage you, because the low moments will come and you need to be supported to stand.
God is always on our side. You may be in a situation which you ask yourself, what did I do? Why is it happening to me? Do not worry. God has his time. Trust him. He will never forsake you.
To add to what Debbie has said, I cannot begin to even think about the challenge. And sometimes the words that we say are so theoretical because we're not living through the challenge, the pain, the frustration, the disappointment that you're going through. But I take you to the one who understands better than any of us does. The God who created you, the God who has promised that he has a plan for you, a purpose for your life, a plan to prosper you, to bring you hope, to give you a bright future. I leave you to that God. I leave you in his hands, and I trust that whether he will bring someone for you now, later, or never, whatever his plan is for you, that he will use that plan to bless your life, to enrich your life, and not only bless your life, but make you a blessing to others for his glory. Thank you so much, ladies, for talking through this topic that is just too big for us to exhaust. And thank you, our audience, for having joined us today. If you would like to engage with this topic further, please look for us on our Facebook page, Women Engage, where you can engage with the topic, engage with one another as we continue to think about all these practical realities of the world that we live in. Until next time, God bless you.